Welcome to BookPilot, your destination for powerful ideas from the world's most impactful books. Today, we're diving into an audiobook summary that's going to basically tear down everything society has ever taught you about finding happiness. We're exploring the subtle art of rethinking your life. If you're tired of the fluff and just want the raw reality of human psychology, you are exactly where you need to be. We're going to look at why the constant, crushing pressure to be positive and successful is actually backfiring on us, and how leaning into life's struggles might just be the secret sauce we've been missing all along. So, let me ask you a crazy question. Is the pursuit of happiness actually making you miserable? I know, it sounds totally backwards, right? But seriously, think about it for a second. Every single day, we're bombarded with the exact same message. Be more popular, be more attractive, grind harder, be more successful. But as we endlessly chase this idea of more, we fall straight into what's known as the paradox of positivity. Constantly chasing success and happiness, it literally just leaves us burned out, chronically dissatisfied, and anxious. We end up completely fixating on our own shortcomings. Chapter 1. The Toxic Positivity Trap. Let's look at why wanting more is actually a deeply negative experience. We live in a culture that increasingly, coddles us from the inevitable discomforts of life. But here's the profound irony we really need to grasp. Avoiding suffering is actually a form of suffering itself. The denial of failure is in itself a failure. Because we try so hard to avoid discomfort, we end up wasting a massive amount of energy. Actually, try thinking of your attention like a limited daily currency. Imagine you wake up every day with exactly 100 energy coins. Every single time you stress over being more popular or freak out over a stranger's opinion on social media, boom, you're spending a coin. If you blow them all on superficial stuff, you'll have absolutely nothing left in the bank for what truly matters.
And this brilliantly illustrates the law of reversed effort, which was famously articulated by the philosopher Alan Watts. He said, "The harder we try to feel better, the worse we feel." It's such an incredible insight, isn't it? It shows that sometimes caring less about hitting that perfect vision of success actually leads to way better outcomes. By just accepting who you already are and what you already have, you free yourself from that exhausting, crushing pressure of always needing more.
Moving on to Chapter 2. Happiness is solving problems. Here, we really need to learn how to embrace the climb. Look, life is basically an endless series of problems. We all tend to think that, one day we'll reach this magical point where our problems just vanish. Spoiler alert, they don't. The solution to today's problem just creates tomorrow's problem. True happiness isn't found in a problem-free life. It's found in the active, ongoing process of solving them. But unfortunately, when we face negative emotions or really tough problems, we often make ourselves completely miserable by falling into one of two traps. First, denying reality. This is where we pretend the problems just don't exist, we distract ourselves, which just leads to massive emotional repression. Or second, playing the victim, where we blame outside circumstances or other people so we don't actually have to take any action. Both of these mindsets completely prevent us from doing the one thing that generates real happiness, directly confronting the problem.
Here's a wild thought. Suffering is actually a biological driving force for change. It's a survival mechanism hardwired right into us. What this means is that we actually need to find the specific struggles and pains that we enjoy enduring. Seriously. If you want to get fit, you got to genuinely enjoy the struggle of waking up early and sweating at the gym. If you want to be a successful artist, you have to embrace the absolute uncertainty of the craft. So don't hope for a life without problems. Hope for a life full of good problems. The joy is quite literally in the climb itself.
Chapter 3. The Freedom of Being Average. Because the reality is, you are not special. Modern self-help culture has really created a lot of highly entitled people who believe they're just destined for extraordinary things, like they deserve massive success without the effort. But the incredibly liberating truth is that you, me, and pretty much everyone else are probably completely average at the vast majority of things we do. And that's okay, because we are constantly flooded with media highlighting only the top fraction of a percent of extreme human accomplishments. The greatest athletes, the richest billionaires, the absolute funniest comedians. We've been totally conditioned to view a normal average existence as a complete failure. We actually feel ashamed of being right there in the middle of the bell curve. But once we finally accept our ordinary, non-exceptional existence, we gain the freedom to appreciate the basic, beautiful experiences of life that actually matter.
Let's look at Chapter 4, Choosing Your Own Struggles. We're going to talk about the actual value of suffering. Consider the story of Hiro Onada. He was a Japanese soldier who kept fighting in the jungles of the Philippines for 30 years after World War II had already ended.
Why on earth would he do that? He did it because his immense suffering was deeply tied to a core personal value of absolute loyalty. Our values completely determine the nature of our problems. So if you change your values, you change your problems, and ultimately, you change your life. To figure out your own values, we can use something called the onion of self-awareness. It's this incredibly useful mental model to peel back the layers and discover what's really driving your behavior. Step 1 is simply recognizing your emotions in the moment. Step 2 is asking yourself why you feel those emotions. But step 3, that's the deepest and most critical layer, uncovering the actual personal values sitting at the core. You have to ask, what exact metric are you using to measure your success in that given moment?
Once you peel that onion, you have to take a really honest look at what you find. We have to actively reject what we call bad values. These are superficial, externally reliant things, like the constant need for attention, or pursuing wealth purely for its own sake, or feeling like you need absolutely everyone to like you. Instead, we've got to adopt what we call cool values. These are controllable and firmly based in reality. Things like honesty, vulnerability, curiosity, and standing up for others. The beauty here is that you control them. They don't control you.
So the absolutely crucial point here is that embracing these 5 highly counterintuitive, even negative values is the actual foundation for real personal growth. First, take full responsibility for everything in your life. Second, openly acknowledge your own ignorance. Third, be willing to recognize your flaws. Fourth, learn to say no and set firm boundaries. And fifth, and we'll get to this in a bit, seriously consider your own death. I know, it sounds super intense, right? But adopting these values strips away all the fluff and perfectly grounds you in reality.
Chapter 5. Action creates true motivation. Because, whether you realize it or not, you are always choosing.
The famous psychologist William James actually transformed his deeply depressed life through a brilliantly simple one-year experiment. He just decided to take absolute responsibility for everything that happened to him. No exceptions. Zero. By doing this, he proved a fundamental psychological truth. We don't always control what happens to us, but we always control how we respond. This requires us to understand the massive difference between fault and responsibility. Focusing on fault, that keeps us totally stuck in the past. It's victimizing and makes us feel utterly powerless. Responsibility, on the flip side, is present-focused and incredibly empowering. Look, just because a terrible situation isn't your fault doesn't mean you lack the responsibility to figure out what you're going to do about it right now. Responsibility is all about action. And part of that responsibility is actively questioning our own minds. There's this devastating story of Meredith, a journalist whose therapy-induced false memory of abuse ended up completely destroying her family. By the time she finally realized the memory was false, the damage was already irreversible. This tragically proves that total certainty is just an illusion, and honestly, it's the absolute enemy of personal evolution. Our memories are flawed. The harder we try to be 100% certain about everything, the more rigid and insecure we actually become.
So if certainty is an illusion, how do we actually move forward? Well, instead of waiting around for inspiration or absolute certainty to strike, you have to realize that taking action first actually generates the very motivation you've been waiting for. This is the do something principle. Step 1, take any small action, literally anything. Step 2, that action naturally generates an emotional response and sparks new ideas. Step 3, that emotional response fuels your motivation to keep going. Action isn't just the effect of motivation, it's the actual cause of it. Which brings us to our final chapter, Chapter 6. Death gives life meaning. This is the ultimate reality check. We must confront the single most uncomfortable truth of all. You are going to die. I know, it's heavy, but recognizing this isn't meant to be depressing at all. It is actually the greatest, most clarifying gift you can ever receive. Anthropologist Ernest Becker realized that humans are entirely unique in our awareness of our own mortality, and this awareness drives this deep existential terror, causing us to build what he calls immortality projects. These are actions we take just to cope with death, like hoarding immense wealth, chasing fame, or obsessing over leaving a legacy. We try so hard to avoid the reality of death, but avoiding it actually robs life of its true weight and significance. Think about it. Without death, every single experience would feel totally inconsequential. If you had infinite time, nothing would matter, because you could always just do it later. Accepting the brevity of life is the exact thing that finally gives you the clarity to reject all those trivial distractions. It gives you the ultimate freedom to fiercely commit to what truly matters, the people you love, the cool values you hold, and the good problems you actually want to solve. So,
let's wrap this up with our key takeaways. The practical lessons here are clear. Stop chasing toxic positivity, accept that you're probably average, take absolute responsibility for your responses, let action drive your motivation, and use your mortality as a tool for clarity. Before you spend another one of your daily energy coins on something totally meaningless, I want you to ask yourself, what truly meaningful problems are you willing to struggle for? Don't ask what you want out of life, ask what pain you are willing to endure. How will the world be different because you are in it? If you enjoyed this audiobook summary and want to discover more powerful ideas from great books, subscribe to BookPilot and stay tuned for more. Thanks for listening.